Hi, and welcome to Conquering Commas, Lesson 12, Quotations. Today we're going to learn all about how to punctuate quotations correctly. Of course, some of this has to do with commas, some of it has to do with a few other pieces of end punctuation. But the good news is that this is your very last comma lesson, and by the end of this lesson, you'll have conquered commas. That's our wild hope. The first thing we're going to do today is review rules number 1 to 11. Then we'll talk about how we use commas with quotations, and we'll have a final review of the material we learned today. First, let's look at these rules that I'm sure you already know. Series, dates and addresses, introductory words, letters, two adjectives, direct address, appositives, interrupters, non-essential clauses, conjunctions, and switched up sentences. I bet you already know these rules. So, why are quotation marks so confusing? You want to quote someone or something, you know you need to use quotation marks. What do you have to do with that comma? And then the really confusing question, what do you do with question marks and exclamation points? You're confused because it's confusing, and it's confusing because actually in different countries, different standards are followed. We're going to talk today about American English and how you should be doing it in America. Let's clear this all up. Here's an example that will help you understand how commas work with quotation marks. Our entire lesson today has an Alexander Hamilton theme. Alexander Hamilton said, comma, quotation mark, I would die to preserve the law upon a solid foundation, but take away liberty and the foundation is destroyed. Period, quotation mark. Note that after you have the word said, you must have a comma. It goes immediately after said, before the quotation mark, and at the end of that sentence, you have a period followed by the quotation mark. If you look at the opposite, you will see that it's very similar. Quotation mark, I would die to preserve the law upon a solid foundation, but take away liberty and the foundation is destroyed, comma, quotation mark, Alexander Hamilton said. Here you will notice that just like in the previous example, you have to have a comma inside the quotation marks, just like you would have to have a period inside the quotation marks. That leads us to our first rule. You need to separate quoted material from the rest of the sentence with commas. Put commas and periods inside quotation marks when they appear at the end of quoted material. Let's look at another example. Quotation mark, Hamilton is the only thing Dick Cheney and I have in common, comma, quotation mark, said President Obama. President Obama also said, comma, quotation mark, this is definitely the room where it happened, period, quotation mark. In both of those examples, you'll see that the comma and the period appear inside the quotation marks. Of course, there's an exception because there's always an exception. If you are using proper MLA format, the period goes outside the quotation marks. That's the only time. Let's look at an example. Hamilton said, comma, here, sir, the people govern. Eliot 348. You'll notice that the parentheses are around Eliot 348 and that the period goes outside that last parentheses. You'll also notice that there is no comma after govern in this case, and this is the one time that you do have a period outside of the quotation mark. Just for a little bonus, did you notice in that sentence there's also direct address with the word sir and commas around either side of it. Here's an example taken right from the musical Hamilton. Hamilton asks, comma, quotation mark, pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir? Question mark, quotation mark. Because the material inside the quotation marks, pardon me, are you Aaron Burr, sir, is a question, the question stays inside the quotation marks. Also in that sentence, you might notice there's an introductory phrase, pardon me, and then there's also direct address with the word sir. Do you remember those rules? Look at the second example. Does Aaron Burr say, comma, quotation mark, talk less, smile more, quotation mark, question mark? Look closely at that sentence. You'll see that talk less, smile more is not a question. So the question mark goes outside the quotation marks because the entire sentence is a question. Here's another example that might clarify this for you. Did Lin-Manuel Miranda say, comma, quotation mark, I wrote the rest of the song on the train, quotation mark, question mark. That whole sentence is asking a question, but the material inside, I wrote the rest of the song on the train, is actually a statement and not a question, so the question mark doesn't go inside the quotation marks. Lin-Manuel Miranda actually wrote some of the songs from Hamilton while he was on the train. Miranda tweeted, comma, quotation mark, or will the blood we shed begin an endless cycle of vengeance and death with no defendants, question mark, quotation mark. You'll see here that he's actually asking a question inside the quotation marks, so that question mark lives right inside the quotation marks to indicate that that material is a question. Here's another example. My cousin said, comma, quotation mark, we got tickets to see Hamilton! Exclamation point, quotation mark. The material inside the quotations is an exclamation, so that exclamation mark stays right inside. In the second sentence, quotation mark, did you sell the car to buy the tickets? Question mark, quotation mark, I asked. In that particular sentence, you can see that the material in the quotations is a question, so that question mark needs to live inside the quotation mark. Just don't ever do crazy stuff like this. Quotation mark. Are you surprised that Lin-Manuel Miranda taught 7th grade English at Hunter? Comma, question mark, quotation, she asked, question mark. Oh, it's just all kinds of wrong. Please don't ever do this. Here's a quick review of what you've learned today. Use commas to separate quoted material from the rest of the sentence. Commas and periods go inside quotation marks, except for that one time when it's in MLA format. Other than that, really keep those commas and periods inside the quotation marks. Question marks and exclamation points are a little bit different, and they go inside the quotation marks if the material inside the quotations is a question or an exclamation. Otherwise, they go outside. Congratulations! You did it! You have conquered commas. You made it through all 12 lessons. I hope you learned a thing or two and had some fun along the way. See ya!